know if my 5 minutes already are gone, but I'd like to say that this in period of the pandemic has been very special. I was saying that the pandemic for a businessman is like in a wedding when you go through the greatest crisis during a marriage. And from then, the couple can look to one another. We got to the worst of our crisis. And here, or we start again with very much strong and vitality, or everything stops here. The, the businessman in this period of pandemic that have these values, especially of economy of share, and I did this experience very strong, was look to myself and said, I got to the most difficult phase of my story. And now it's the moment to say, yes, I believe in the values of economy of sharing. And here I can say openly, I believe, yes, that if I do well my part, the natural order of what was promised prophetically in economy of sharing will happen. Providence will come. I had a company which had very strong problems, one of them companies I had. And in this period, immediately, like everybody did, the tendency is to fire 80% of the employees. I believe, I bet in new things, and not only in this period of pandemic, we grew, but also now, it's true. I am in the health area, of course. This is true. This is an exceptional fact, positive for my side. But I had the inspiration in this period and the courage with huge risks to find import medicine. I don't work with medicine, but a breach of the law in Brazil to bring anesthesia for relieve the pain of the patients who are under respiration. I brought from Portugal anesthesians that came to Brazil to relieve the pain of many people. This sincerely, at this point of my life, economy of sharing puts inside such a strength inside of us. And we don't live like that to get money or economical growth in the company. This is fundamental and decisive and important. Without this, the company doesn't live. But it's true that really motivates us is really to do of this company an instrument to build a better world and give the best of us to build a better society. So I could say many other things. My activity is production of these enteral foods. With this company, I don't work. I'm part of the council. I already gave it over a long time ago. And I work in this other company that is to, oh, I'm sorry if I was beyond what I need. In this moment, Diego is now will continue our programmation. Huge thank you for this first introduction. Armando, whom I respect and like very much. I would like to control that for the translation. Everything works well. On the Portuguese channel, so it's working. You can continue. If something doesn't work, I'll let you know. You can see my screen. Yes. I want to ask you, can you see the presentation or another screen? It's in a PowerPoint and not in the presentation mode. We see it open as a PowerPoint. Now, yes. Please speak slowly for the translators. I'm Diego, and I'm part of the team of employees of Unitour Travel Agency. Change something here as a detail, sorry. And I'm part of the team of the travel aid. My company function is to coordinate the works of communication and marketing. I'm bachelor in tourism, and recently I finished MBA in strategical marketing. I work in Unitur for 4 years and a half, and I've gone through other travel agencies in Brazil, some internationally renowned. I'd like to, since now, thank the invitation to share the case of our company, which I represent. It's a great honor. I represent each one of my colleagues in the story that really touches me until more deeply. I thank Professor Benedetto Gui for the opportunity, and I greet with all my heart all the students and professors of the Sophia University. I greet also the others who are interested in this webinar. I am in Porto Alegre right now, where our Unitour headquarters are, a city in the extreme south of Brazil, already near Uruguay and Argentina. As you can see, Brazil is as the size of a country. We are approximately 8 hours by car from Uruguay until the border with Uruguay. And we are about 9 hours from the border of Argentina. But just for you to locate yourself. Before I was in Jerusalem in Israel for a year and a half, and I could work in a receptive tourism. When I arrived there in a land that's completely different from everything I ever saw before, there was a company of tourism that was looking for somebody who would speak Portuguese, who would be graduated in tourism and had experience in the area. I was immediately contracted to coordinate the operation of the Latin languages. And I developed the commercial work with companies of Brazil and other countries of Latin America, Portugal, and Spain. This opportunity allowed a strong network with the companies and the countries I commented. Now I'm going to tell you now the story of Unitour. Still with the premise, the invitation to share this history and case of Unitour was, let me embarrass at the beginning. As you can imagine, a touristic activity is one of those most hit by the pandemic of COVID. We are in a very challenging and uncertain area. I felt the motivation to share the history of a company that brings in sea conquests and values of justice and fraternity. I feel the deep desire to transmit this history with greatest respect and dignity to each one of my colleagues that every day give themselves to go beyond getting only their say and create an environment of work with responsibility and commitment and responsibility with all the stakeholders. Very well. The Unitour's story started in 1995 when a group of members of the Focolare movement, of which I am also a member, until then were employees of a multinational company called Rapti with headquarters in Orlando. They received the offer to own that company. And during as time went by, we were increasing the number of employees up to 20 employees, besides other service providers. Rapting was specialized in commercialization of tourist products like air tickets for missionaries. It initially went from Holland to countries of Africa. The activities in Brazil also were directed to the Catholic public, like priests, bishops, religious schools, and congregations. Little by little, there were groups of pilgrimages, initially to Holy Land, Italy, Portugal. Then to the other countries of Europe like France, Spain, Greece, and others. In the last years, we launched groups of travel within cultural and leisure trips like Canada, Southeast Asia, Russia, and many others. Here I listed some of these places which we mostly worked. Here there are some more religious, some not. Aparecida, the sanctuary here in São Paulo, Brazil, sanctuaries in Europe, Eastern Europe, Germany, Turkey, and Greece, Italy, and Balkans, Mexico with Cancun. There are other which are more cultural. We have Peru with Machu Picchu, the Maranhão place, the dunes of in the beach, Holland in Brazil, Belgium, Germany, Russia, Morocco, Andalusia, Dubai, and Egypt. Here you can see some pictures of our groups, be it for around Brazil, but also in Europe, Canada, South America. As you can see, more and more our work is solidifying in organizing groups, even though we have all those tourist services individually, like air tickets, hotel reservation, car rentals. In Brazil, we highlight the pilgrimage groups to the sanctuary of Aparecida, and those coming from other regions who come to the South Mountain Range near where we are, which is a very sought destination. Right now, Unitur has a mailing of 20,000 clients from various states of Brazil. From the beginning of his activities, the managers try to keep always the values given by Carado for the economy of sharing. Unitur solidified and established itself as the main specialized travel agents in Brazil for religious tourism, with a presence of customers all the way from north to south. We got the end of 2019 with approximately 100 groups of trips just in that year, and around 3,000 passengers boarded, and our groups to domestic and international destinations. Besides many more individual passengers who bought their tickets through us. We are 2019, we got almost 100 groups boarded, about 3,000 passengers, each group with an average of 30 people. One of the novelties of that year in 2019 was the pedagogic tourism, which already happened, but in 2019 had a greater increase of these groups of pedagogic tourism were developed in partnership with schools and universities for technical visits and also historic companies. 2020 was the expected year, 25 years of our company, a history of success, acknowledgement on all the trade and the customers. Our planning was to increase the number of groups of trips, and we started up a project of opening a subsidiary in the northeast of Brazil to give more support to the customers from that region. And of course, we also had a whole group trip for all the employees and their family to celebrate the 25 years of the company. And January 2020, the first news of the in China spread of a virus with a great lethal load was something very far away for us in Brazil. Afterwards, when it arrived to other countries of Europe, like Italy, and from one moment to another, all the borders, be it air or land, started to close, canceled Flights locked down, cancellation of trips, packages, our telephone started to ring continuously, emails of refund requests. In few days, that environment of work, of talk, laughter, sometimes tears, had completely transformed. We were in home office, a very quick need, change, and a need to adapt. How long would the pandemic last? Maybe some few weeks would be expected. But even in this uncertain scenario, the company decided not to fire any employee. On the opposite direction of many other companies that, as a preventive measure, fired part of their employees. Even if our office were closed without work, presential work, during the first works months of home office, only to pay the service for the person who did the cleaning for her not to be uncovered. After a few months, the Brazilian government allowed to reduce the working hours and salaries. This was necessary to keep the cash flow of the company, since the demand for our services was very low. Even with their salary reduction, the team remained freely available to work beyond the working hours and give the best of themselves. Each sale, as small as it was celebrated. Some employees took some initiatives to offer a more special service. One of them delivered the documentation of the trip with the tickets to a customer together with a cake he made himself. This gesture, can you imagine, delighted the passenger and, of course, brought them more sales. Only in August of last year, 26 months of the cases started in Brazil, we had to take some needs of firing. Difficult decision because we knew that behind each employee there were a situation and a family. We tried to do everything honestly and respect to each one of the dismissed with all their rights. Some of them continued to spread our services with their friends and family. And this also brought us sales. In September last year, the situation of the pandemic seemed controlled. In October, we started again our presential work, launching small groups of trip up to 15 people to Brazil, to the sanctuary of Aparecida in Brazil. It was early. We ended 2020 with only 8 groups of trips. We From 100 groups in 2019, we went down to 8 groups in 2020. The output of the company was around 20,000 reais, about 3,500 euros. And only the pay, well, before we had to dismiss people, only the payroll was about 160,000 reais. And you can imagine around 25,000 euros. So if we only got 3,500, we were really in the red. And we're paying all the other expenses. But we didn't stop. For many years, Unitur cooperates with the NGO AFASO in a needy neighborhood of the city, which gives support to children before or after schooling with workshops of music, computers, arts, co-working, and others. When we got to know that they needed blankets for the cold winter, we launched a campaign to get from each 4 blankets donated by customers, friends, and suppliers. The company was going to offer a 5th blanket. The result was immediate, and we quickly got to 85 blankets. With the additional values, we could help to repair the NGO facilities that were badly needed. Another initiative, another this experience was very beautiful. The because it brought the cooperation of our customers, believing in this proposal of the company, in this work. They made themselves available so generously with the donations to this NGO. And this initiative was born from the employees, not by the managers. But it was the employees who felt this desire that the company could do something socially. Vis-a-vis the pandemic. As you can see, these blankets only were donated of a very low income with a greater challenge, but it was worthwhile by the result and the synergies of the cooperation that it brought. This initiative showed the seriousness for the public that acknowledged the customers noticing that this touristic activity is now very hit by the pandemic, sent us message of friendship and support, which motivates us to continue firmly to offer our service in an honest and responsible way, to favor the well-being of the company. UNITOUR 2 years ago hired a professional labor gymnastic. In these last days, due to the hard need to reduce our expenses, amongst them also this labor gymnast, when he was informed that UNITOUR was going to stop the service, the instructor immediately made himself available to offer the service for free. Something similar happened with a person who works in digital marketing. When she heard about the suspension of the contract, she immediately offered to do this technical service also for free for the coming months. Besides the pandemic, other values like the devaluation of the Brazilian currency has challenged the travel agencies. It's a scenario of very many uncertainties, which requires a double effort to find solutions and opportunities. In front of this, we found the importance to have a culture based on communion and also on trust, where the challenges and conquests are shared, and we can continue our path in what is possible to realize a new way of acting in the economy. Here I commented a little bit about this reality of the political reality, which is also very difficult in Brazil, besides the economic. But we have a perspective of new trips. We always have to reinvent ourselves, new market niches of pedagogic tourism, and also more and more of the corporate world. Here are our social contacts, our sites, and see our itineraries, Facebook, Instagram, and everything. Through these social networks, we try to bring a closer relation with our customers and suppliers. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'm available for the moment of questions. Thank you, Diego, for your presentation. Very lively and gives us a lot of hope. Now you were speaking of the challenges of political but economical, this period, especially of the pandemic. Which came much more in light. How you already did before. How did you do regarding salaries with the employees, health insurance? How did this work and works until today? Thank you for the question, Taina. It was a very favorable working area. The relationships between the people was very this cooperation amongst the team, and each contact for the customer or even competitors was based on this respect, on this dignity, honest manner, but also with this desire to promote a reduction of the inequality. How did this happen? This maybe is a question. Unitur tried always to keep a payment of a salary that was dignified, with more than what is paid by the other companies of the area, the industry. The years where there was a superávit, we had the payment of the 14th salary as a distribution of the profit of the company. This is a difference, Taina, because I had the opportunity to work in other travel agencies, some internationally renowned, and you noticed a great environment of competition, because many the time there was sort of a fight for the sales, so that I should get the targets and have a better salary, a supplement to myself. Unitur avoided this kind of proposal so that all should feel co-responsible jointly by the work. This offer of a better salary for all was one of the policies of the company. Then, regarding the decision of health insurance, until recently we had a health insurance that gave a coverage, better coverage than all. Because many times in companies, only those of a higher level have these better health insurance for full national coverage. So we wanted to have everybody to have the same health insurance, regardless whether it was the manager or the person who was doing the simplest work, like cleaning. Recently, because of this lower income, we had to review this coverage of the health insurance, but trying always this option to offer a coverage that would be really honest for each one of these employees. Still, a very interesting, every 3 years, we start our work with all the team of Unitur for a moment where we throw the company Q that I guess you know. We do a quick on a text of our companies, of business, which helps us to think, and we open for sharing, for exchange of ideas, of challenges, of conquests. It's a very strong moment. Then within the company, we have 5 people who are responsible for the different areas. We take some decisions, more internal and reserved. But after this, we open always more and more this dialogue with the participation of everyone. This brings us in a very low turnover. The great majority of our employees who are with us worked at the company for many years, some of them at 25 years, all the way when it was still Rafting. Then it became Unitur, and they started with simple jobs like delivery of documents with a motorcycle, and they use this opportunity to get to position of responsibility positions. It's a company that promotes this really retention. This is Taina. It's easy to live this all. It's of course not, Many are involved with other activities. It's always a challenge. It's a daily conquest with our targets, our time deliveries, with the greatest richness we can have is really this culture, this basis that also in these moments, I would say, is more than ever in these moments, I would say, is really a secret that we find to find that strength and that courage to give the best of ourselves. Thank you, Diego. To bring into contact this life happens in the universal area of Sophia. So we have together with us some students, I'm one of them, of the course of economics. Now we will open for questions for these students. Many others who would like to ask questions, you can write in the chat. Maybe we can start. I know Eric had a question. Maybe he could already start with it. Thank you. Welcome, Eric. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to thank the presentation of Diego. He, in the first visit to Lo Piano, introduced me to Sophia, where I study today. My question, Diego, would be on how is the center point of the economy of sharing the profit management? How does this work? Excuse me, for that our translator can hear, can you select the language and put it in Portuguese so they can hear you better for translation? Okay. So I thank Diego and I'm going to the question. My question is how in Unitur the profit management is, the sharing of the profit, which is central economy of sharing. View of the situations of poverty, the investment of the training of the people and reinvestment in the company. Do we have any practice or criteria or specific process that we could share? And that's second question, but you already answered it. The economy of sharing, at this value of the management of the solidarity, right? My question would be, within my research, how this is transmitted to the employees. And you already told us about this practice with the company Q, but if you'd like to say something more about that, of the values of solidarity, thank you. Thank you, Eric, for the question. A greeting to you and Nady and your children. This sharing of the profits, which I was commenting, happens in different ways. Like I said, even this practice and this policy and this decision of doing a payment of a more worthy salary is already part of that. So that everybody, all the employees, should have a salary which is more really worthy, superior to the market in payments. As I said before, the choice of the health insurance, also a reduction of profits, or I would say a better distribution of our profits. Maybe. As I commented in the years 2019, we managed to do that. 2020 was impossible, but the payment of a 14th salary. In Brazil, you already receive 13 salaries per year anyway, by law. So we could share our profit with this 14th salary. This aspect of solidarity, this initiative that we could present with this NGO, which we were already working before for quite a while, which is a survey that's very important. We know that during the pandemic, we had companies that were trying to opportunities to show themselves in the market as solidarians. But these initiatives in years before already happened. The specific dates, the need that we knew that the NGO was going through, we already had a cooperation. But what I would say, besides that, as the prophet itself, all our culture that this brings of this cooperation. As I said, our customers notice that beside this trust, we not only have a commercial relationship, but of course we need the profit, but we have solidarious initiatives. It's noticed by the interpersonal relationship with the employees and the suppliers who respect our company. I don't know if it's clear or you have any, is there any other question that I can clarify? But I see that we have these elements that go through this sharing of our profit. It was very clear, and I think there are other panelists who would like to ask something. Thank you, Diego. Thank you, Eric, for the question. I think we have other questions who are in the chat, also in the Zoom. We have Jessica from Manaus who helps us with the questions. Jessica, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, because we have people from all around the world. Diego, there are two questions for two here in the chat of the YouTube, and I will pass for somebody to the chat. First was fun. Maria Leonel, you'd like to know if you had as an experience with refunds during the pandemic, and Samira Lord is asking if there's any Unitor to do partnership with colleges in Ceará, the state of Ceará, Brazil. Regarding the refunds, yes. Thank you for the question. Regarding the refunds, what happens? Our work is always of intermediation between the customers and the different other suppliers, airlines, hotels. So you can imagine that each service has a policy that's completely different, right? So for instance, some the refund was more immediate, some used the provisional way of which was launched by the government, which allowed the refund up to 12 months. So it was a work of those who many times we have to really find a solution for the passengers for each case. I don't know if was this the perspective of the question, but it's a work that really took away a lot of, demanded a lot of time, as you can imagine, to get in company with an airline to ask a refund. It's not always so simple. Flights which were canceled the last moment, so it's really touching to see how many colleagues who work during the night or in the middle of the night, weekends, holidays, to give very freely to answer these questions and fight for them. Regarding the cooperation with an institute in the Ceará, we are totally open and available. It would be a great honor to increase this cooperation. With some of our students who have interest in economy of sharing already look for us to see a bit the story, what happens, to do research. We are certainly open to this partnership. Another question from Clesia. If there is any, if you desire or you thought of doing some more rural trips with nature to relate with people, did you already think of some kind of idea like that? Does something exist like that? It's an interesting question because of the pandemic, we noticed that the destinations of greatest contact with nature are more desired now because of the circulation of the virus. People have been really looking for these leisure or even beaches and the countryside. Speaking specifically in Rio Grande do Sul state in the south, we have with other tourist agents where they do this kind of tourism with agricultural places where they manufacture wine, wineries, which is very strong in that state with some local producers. So we have launched some itineraries with this perspective. But what I could say still, a mailing of customers, we don't start from one day to another. It's a customer that has a very specific profile. I would say that we have a mailing of about 20,000 customers, which was built along in 25 years. And they have an interest in religious destinations, pilgrimage groups. So it's not that we, as innovation we can be, to reach the opportunities, find the alternatives in the market. We have a customer base that has these interests. We cannot forget the core values of the company, even in the Senai to go into blind adventures. We have to see these new itineraries, these new opportunities of tourism, more in contact with nature, as I said, through these itineraries developed within cooperation with other operators. But our core is always the one of groups to pilgrimage, which is what made us be segmented in the market and reach a customer base which is faithful and specific. Many travel agents broke with internet and other technologies because they didn't have this capability, I would say, to find their market niche. It could be, corporate or whatever. So this is something we have to consider in this moment, to not to doing blind choices. Thank you, Diego, for your clarifications. We already have in the chat of Zoom a request for contact from somebody, I don't know which country she is, Norma. Somebody interested in services of Unitour. We are totally available. I have a question to Armando. Hello. Sometimes we have situations which really put us at the test when it's, bribery and these kind of things. It's challenging for me. I would like to ask you if you have any experience along these 30 years, if you have any experience in this sense that you could share with us, please. Big hug, Armando. Armando had some problem with the connection. He's not with us anymore. So I'd like to receive another special invitation, which is Maria Elena, who is an organizer of the great motivators of the economy of communion in Brazil. Maybe she could share with us a little bit of this experience of economy of communion in Brazil, with the also in the this dynamic of economy of Francis. Oh, Francis. Good morning, Eric, Jessica, Taina. How good to see you. Good morning, everybody who are with us, following us with Zoom and all the language. I'm Maria Helena. I live here in the south of Brazil. In my city, it's cold, where Jessica, it's hot. I'm very happy to share this place and listen to the unit tour experience through the voice of Diego, which is a great friend of ours. So I'm going to share quickly how we are trying to work in this moment with economy of sharing in Brazil after the great input, the great program that the Pope Francis launched around the world, the economy of Francis globally, already for a while, AMPECOM, which is the Association for the Economy of Communion in Brazil, which serves economy of communion in Brazil, invited all their companies and also the project that economy of communion in Brazil develops, has done a big effort in contacting other movements and organizations. This was already a movement that existed before Economy of Francis, and with Economy of Francis, we felt that it should be our priority. Also thinking that to do systemic and institutional changes was necessary that economy of sharing should be with very defined strategies and in partnership with other movements and organizations. So knowing the new economics and organizations with marvelous people with vocations that are brilliant, who did a very solid work and genuine in the field of cultural changes for the economics to work, to become what we dream. And the interesting in this going with other groups is to see how much each movement or organization has a strategy and a vocation. And if we work together, we work in different layers, facing different problems, offering different contributions. So for us, we have worked a lot with the System B, Institute of Citizenship and Companies, and other organizations which are more regional. Artemisa, who started the dialogue with us. We have several synergetic situations where we try to dialogue. What we noticed, we still are learning to work in a synergetic and partnership way, which is a challenge, but it's a very pleasureless, because we know that amongst the organizations and there is this identification with this common cause. An economics of Francis gives us this global view. The Pope is very loved here in Brazil. He's a Latin Pope. He speaks to the world, but we think and feel that we are very special when he speaks, because he brings his history, which is a story of a Latin Pope. So economics of Francis touches many leaderships here in Brazil and brought to the economy of shared communion something that we didn't have before. but also responsibility for our position. So it has been a very rich experience. We are working with leadership of these other movements to build a national strategy of the new economics within the Francis economics of Francis context. So we're talking about public economies. So we are learning a lot in this context, and we're very happy finalizing. We noticed that the desire for economy of communion because we did a position of digital marketing, which is something very important. Today, many people go to Google and find economy of communion as a movement linked to see social impacts. You can see that also in LinkedIn and Facebook. And I'd like to know what you see. This happens every week. And this brought us a surprise and a confirmation that's important to work with positioning and civil strategies. And finishing, we noticed an increase in a number of members of association of about 20% more members after we started this work to position in digital marketing. We think that digital marketing is something to sell, but we also have to learn to offer our proposal of value in the business world and delight those with what we can do well. There's no problem in that if we use all that to our service. So we are very happy with this new moment of growth. Which brings us to a new position. Armando is back. We can answer now your question. Thank you, Taina. Thank you for the opportunity. What is the question? Maybe you could start with the question to Eric to give, how do you share your profits? We either had the perspective of Unitur, 1/3 here, 1/3 there, 1/3 there. Maybe you can say something. We can't hear him properly. Could you please change to the language of Portuguese? He's explaining to him how to put the language properly for us to listen to him better. Now I'm speaking in Portuguese, my language again. I said Chiara taught us something that's very important. And she was straight. It's from communion. She gave us some directives, some ways. In practice, we see the economy of communion, what is really worthwhile to live communion, but communion could be understood in different ways. Regarding communion itself for groups, I have tried to take this aspect very seriously from the beginning, because I see this for the Brazilian in economy of communion. We have to believe deeply in it, and I can say to, I can't speak here. We believe and give, and it will be given. We will not. Without that, we will not be economy of communions and companies. Even if they are people who are not Catholic, who don't have a Christian denomination, but the practice will show them. So our experience with communion is to be very faithful. For instance, we had years where we didn't have profits or very low profits, where it didn't have where to bring communion. But in that year, we did the experience. We and my wife, who was my partner, take money from our own personal saving. We cannot blame the lack of success of a year like we had in the account of those who need money. So, since we could, we did this experience to take from our private savings, because the relation of money with us human beings is always of attachment. We want to give when we have too much. In economy of sharing, we have to give what we have. Doesn't matter if we have too much or not. So this has been a beautiful experience along this year. We had moments where we couldn't share that something in that month. So we would do the sharing every month. After Ampicon, we started to do it once a year. Of course, according to needs, we have specific sharing. Chiara showed us a way, and after this, we together with you, with each one of you, found ways along this natural ways, which are modern and natural, to do this communion. I personally, I'm not a researcher or a studious. I'm not a professor in the university. I'm a practical person and a businessman. We cannot, in economy of sharing, in all the instances where we go and where we have contact, we have always to have the courage to say that economy of commune is a new culture, which is much more than communion, but groups and initiatives around the world which work for social, they are very many. I understand privately. We always have to look and keep our differences. And our difference is communion in the different environments, even of time. Being available to go the world around, speak about this. I was in Cuba talking about economy of communion last year. One of the most beautiful experiences in my life. To speak to small entrepreneurs, very young, who are living in the completely different experience, getting into the entrepreneur world. Economy of communion is a horizontal issue if we know how to communicate it with life. For me as an entrepreneur, for you as researcher. Sorry if it was too long. Could I do a complementation? What Armando said is very central. Today, we have developed, but we still need to improve a lot. When you speak 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Today, we understand that communion means what is shared. Not only financially in money, but also time, work, and we have entrepreneurs who share the school of Santa Teresinha in Guarapuava. They give scholarships for students who have low income. This is monetized as a communion that they give to the local community, and we monetize it in Ampacom. We have an entrepreneur in Bahia of Alto Elevadores who did high community sharing with projects of poor, needy neighborhood. Many of you know Jean. Many of you met him. In this community, Van Dilson did many sharings through the Do Alto. This will be monetized by Ampacom because this is an experience of communion. There are companies who don't have profit because of the word profit. We don't use the word profit anymore because many companies don't have profit. But as Armando said, today in Brazil, we grow. In the pandemic, we had an increase of 30% in a sharing of the companies, but the companies didn't have profit. They took money out of their own salaries, of their own resources, and they put it in emergency needs of Ampeco, in projects. And this is what Armando said is basically, we don't say profits anymore. And there are very many companies that have resources. They share knowledge, time of technical consultancy. We have in Ampacom a team of business consultants which charge 30% lower values than those charged in the market. And it's monetized as communion. Just to complement Armando's response, we had the increase of the communion of the company, 40% of the economy. We are very touched by that. Because in a year where everybody is closing and breaking down, giving is stronger than the survival instinct. About the other question, about corruption, that's right. Well, I look around me and I say, where is the corruption? I live where there is no corruption. Why? Because the relationship we brought forth in all, even though I live in one of the most corrupt countries in the world, the great to be this country, to be in this situation, the greatest economies in the world, in the countries, more unequal countries of the world, where corruption is, I believe, and I say to everyone, the great problem of our Brazil is really corruption. I look around and around me in my activity, I don't see corruption. Why? If you behave with a way, attitude where the people know that this behavior and this practice, you automatically, you rule out, you're not even look for people who work like that. I would say our way of doing business, modus operandi, makes it that we don't have this opportunity. Because to have corruption, it must be that there should be one corrupt and one corrupter, both corruptors that meet, or somebody that is, let's say, brought to corruption. So for us, this has been the experience. It's not in our culture, and it's not true that it's not possible to prosper and grow in this world, be it wherever, to any activity, not being corrupt. It's not true. Even because I believe that the corrupt even in the public activities in the government and of the state, municipal are not the majority of the people, but are those that get into strategic positions to have the power. Same way, along my story of 25 years as an entrepreneur, I noticed that there's a huge amount of people who work in a way that has morally a right sort. This is a strong area to grow with people who have this kind of behavior in the market. Not to forget, in my point of view, the great problem of Brazil is really the bad use of the public money. This I really believe in. I hope this changes one day. Thank you, Armand. Unfortunately, our time arrived to the end. We have other questions for all the three, but the time is what it is. We thank you, Diego, Armando, Maria Elena, who have been with us and shared this life, which gives us so much hope. We particularly in this management for a sustainable economy, which is exactly management for a sustainable economy. We decided they're going in Portuguese. This strengthens us in research. I thank all of you. And the question that you still have, we'll try to discuss. I'm sure our entrepreneurs will be happy to answer them. So we hope to get the questions to them and make them available for you. Thank you for being here with us. It was fantastic. And remembering that our next meeting already has a date. We are going to Africa. Don't lose. We don't have other details. We're going to, we know it's on the 13th of May. We will meet there in all the social media, not to lose anything. Thank you very much. Have a good day. I'd like to leave a final message for the young people. Something that came from my experience. We can never know a way before we go through it. So the best choice is not to stop at the beginning. Go through the road. We'll only find the beauty of it as we go, at least for a certain stretch. This is my life in the economy of sharing. Thank you very much for this really beautiful closure. Thank you all for having been here. See you on 13th of May. Bye-bye.